The summons. Ambassador Lysander Cade stood before the obsidian gates of the Galactic Sovereignty Council, his reflection distorted in their mirror-smooth surface. Behind him, his aide, Maya Ishikawa, clutched a data tablet that contained Earth's entire defense against charges of aggressive expansion. "They're going to eat us alive in there," Maya whispered. Lysander adjusted his collar. "Then we'll make sure we give them indigestion." The gates parted with a sound like grinding mountains. Inside, the council chamber stretched impossibly high, its ceiling lost in artificial stars. 73 species sat in judgment, arranged in concentric rings around a single platform where the accused would stand. At the chamber's apex sat High Arbiter Velshera, a crystalline being whose facets caught and split light into accusations. "Human delegation approach." Velshera's voice resonated through every molecule in the room. Lysander walked forward, his footsteps echoing. Maya followed, her heart hammering. They'd prepared for this moment for months, ever since the sovereignty had accused humanity of violating the expansion protocols by establishing colonies in the Kepler reaches without proper authorization. "Ambassador Cade," Velshera began, "humanity stands accused of 17 violations of the Colonization Compact, 42 breaches of the Resource Allocation Treaty, and 1 count of reckless endangerment of established trade routes. How do you plead?" Lysander looked up at the assembled species. The Jothic, insectoid merchants who controlled half the galaxy's shipping lanes. The Norvathians, gaseous beings who existed in containment suits and manipulated financial markets like gods playing with mortal coins. The Krell Dominion, reptilian warriors who'd held military supremacy for 3,000 years. "Not guilty," Lysander said simply. A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the assembly. Prosecutor Rex Val, a Krell with scales like burnished copper, rose from his seat. "Not guilty." Rex Val's voice was a predator's purr. "Then perhaps you can explain why your species established 14 colonies in restricted zones, strip-mined asteroids that were allocated to the Norvathian economic sphere, and built military installations in neutral space?" "We can explain it," Lysander said. "We followed the colonization compact to the letter. Every single letter." "Impossible," Velshera's light fractured into sharp angles. "The Jothic submitted claims to those territories 600 years ago. The compact clearly states that established claims take precedence over settlements, yes." Maya stepped forward, her tablet projecting documents into the air. "But not over inhabited worlds. According to Section 7, Paragraph 12 of the Colonization Compact, any species that can prove continuous habitation of a territory for more than 1,000 years holds absolute claim." The chamber fell silent. "Humanity has only been spacefaring for 200 years, Rex Val objected. "True," Lysander said. "But humans have existed for over 300,000 years. And we've been in those systems for far longer than 1,000. He gestured to Maya, who brought up holographic images. Archaeological sites, ancient ruins, cave paintings of stars. "These are petroglyphs from Earth, dated to 30,000 years ago. They depict the constellation we now call the Kepler reaches. These people observed those stars, named them, incorporated them into their cultures and religions. Under the compact's own definition of habitation, observation and cultural integration qualify." "This is absurd." Rex Val's tail lashed. "Those primitives couldn't possibly have." "Couldn't have what?" Lysander's voice went cold. "Looked up? Dreamed? The compact doesn't specify technological requirements for habitation. It says, and I quote, "Any species demonstrating continuous awareness and cultural significance placed upon a celestial region may claim said region as part of their heritage territory." Velshera's light dimmed. "This interpretation is unprecedented." "It's also correct," Maya added, projecting another document. "Furthermore, the Resource Allocation Treaty only applies to resources discovered after treaty ratification. The asteroids we mined in the Kepler reaches contain iron, silicon, and carbon, elements humanity has been utilizing for thousands of years. We didn't discover them. We just found more of them." "And the military installations?" Rex Val demanded. "Defensive structures protecting our heritage sites," Lysander said. "Permitted under the Self-Defense Clause, Article 19. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species shouted at each other in a dozen languages. The Jothic delegation was conferring frantically. The Norvathians' containment suits literally vibrated with agitation. Velshera raised a crystalline appendage, and silence crashed down like a hammer. "This council will adjourn for deliberation. The human delegation will remain available for further questioning." As the various species filed out, muttering and gesturing angrily, Maya leaned toward Lysander. Do you think it worked? Lysander watched Rexval glare at them from across the chamber. I think, he said quietly, we just opened a door we can't close. Every species in this galaxy is about to realize the same thing. Those treaties are full of loopholes big enough to fly a starship through. Is that good or bad? Lysander smiled grimly. That depends on whether we're better at finding loopholes than they are. The technicality war. 3 days later, the council reconvened. But the atmosphere had changed. Species sat in tight clusters, whispering, making deals. The unity that had existed when they'd summoned Earth to face judgment had fractured. Lysander noticed it immediately. The Jothic weren't sitting with the Norvathians anymore. The Krell Dominion had moved their seats closer to the chamber floor. Velshera's light was a chaotic storm of colors. This council has reviewed the human arguments, the High Arbiter began. And we have concluded that humanity's interpretation of the colonization compact, while creative, falls within the legal framework of established law. The chamber exploded. Half the delegations were on their feet, shouting protests. The other half sat in stunned silence. However, Velshera continued, struggling to be heard over the din, this council recognizes that such an interpretation creates a precedent that threatens the stability of the entire sovereignty structure. Therefore, we propose an emergency revision of the compact to clarify. Point of order. A new voice rang out. Ambassador Thelmore of the Syraxian Confederacy stood, his forearms spread wide. The Syraxians were a minor power, barely worth noticing in galactic politics. If humanity's interpretation is valid, then so is mine. The Syraxian people have observed the Antares cluster since our species developed eyes. We hereby claim it as heritage territory. That's absurd, Rexval snarled. The Antares cluster is ours, Thelmore interrupted. According to the law you just upheld. Another delegation stood. Then another. Within minutes, 40 different species were claiming heritage rights to systems across the galaxy based on ancient observations, cultural stories, or religious significance. The galactic sovereignty, which had maintained order for 10,000 years, was tearing itself apart. Maya leaned close to Lysander. This is getting out of control. No, Lysander murmured. This is exactly what needs to happen. Velshera's light pulsed with desperate energy. Order. We must have order. But order was the last thing anyone wanted. The Jothic were already negotiating with the Syraxians, offering trade deals in exchange for transit rights through newly claimed territories. The Norvathians were frantically calculating how the reshuffling of claims would affect their investments. Only the Krell sat silent, watching. Rexval's eyes never left Lysander. Finally, after 2 hours of chaos, Velshera managed to restore enough quiet to speak. This council cannot function under these conditions. We propose a 30-day recess to allow for diplomatic negotiations and a comprehensive review of all territorial claims. During this time, all species will respect existing settlements and... No. Everyone turned. Rexval was standing, his posture radiating violence. No recess. No negotiations. Humanity has destroyed the legal foundation of this sovereignty with their sophistry and word games. If we allow this to continue, the galaxy will descend into chaos. I propose we resolve this matter the old way. Velshera's light flickered uncertainly. Commander Rexval, the Treaty of Armistice was established when all species agreed to be bound by common law, Rexval interrupted. But humanity has proven that our laws are meaningless. Therefore we invoke the right of challenge. If humanity wants to claim territory, let them defend it with strength, not rhetoric. The chamber went deathly silent. The right of challenge was ancient, predating the sovereignty itself. It allowed any species to challenge another to direct military conflict over disputed territory. The winner took all. The loser ceased to be a problem. Lysander felt Maya stiffen beside him. You want to go to war? Lysander asked, his voice carrying in the silence. I want to restore order, Rexval said. The Krell Dominion has maintained peace in this galaxy for 3 millennia. We have the strongest military, the most disciplined forces, the greatest tactical minds. If humanity truly believes they deserve an empire, let them take it from us. The right of challenge requires a formal declaration, Velshera said, though her light suggested she already knew how this would end. Do you, Commander Rexval, speaking for the Krell Dominion, formally challenge humanity's territorial claims? I do. And Ambassador Cade, speaking for humanity, do you accept this challenge or withdraw your claims? Every eye in the chamber fixed on Lysander. He could feel the weight of Earth hanging on his next words. If he refused, humanity would lose everything they'd built in the Kepler reaches. If he accepted, they'd be going to war against the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Lysander thought of the ships in Earth's fleet. No. Untested. Built with experimental technology because humanity had only been spacefaring for 2 centuries and had to innovate to keep up. He thought of the 3 billion humans living in the Kepler reaches colonies, building lives, raising children, dreaming of futures among the stars. He thought of the countless civilizations throughout human history that had stood before superior forces and been given the choice: submit or fight. Humanity always chose the same thing. We accept, Lysander said quietly. The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different energy. War was coming. The galaxy would burn or bend. Rexval smiled, showing teeth. Excellent. The rules of challenge state that conflict will begin in 30 days. The territory in dispute will be the Kepler reaches. Victory conditions: complete military control of all systems in the region. Surrender or annihilation are the only acceptable outcomes. Agreed, Lysander said. As the session ended and species began filing out, already calculating how this war would affect their interests, Maya grabbed Lysander's arm. We can't beat the Krell. They have 3,000 warships. We have 60. Lysander watched Rexval leave, the Krell commander's tail swishing with satisfaction. 57 actually, Lysander corrected. We lost 3 in the Frontier Rebellion. That's even worse. Maybe, Lysander said. Or maybe the Krell just made the same mistake everyone makes. What mistake? They assumed we'd fight fair. Earth prepares. The message reached Earth 36 hours after the council session ended. President Sarah Okonkwo sat in the Situation Room beneath Geneva, surrounded by military advisors, scientists, and strategists, watching Lysander's recorded briefing. So let me understand this correctly, she said when the recording ended. You argued us into a legal victory that triggered a galaxy-wide crisis, which forced the Krell to declare war on us, and now we have 30 days before the most powerful military in known space comes to annihilate our colonies and possibly Earth itself? That's an accurate summary, Madam President, appeared on the screen as Lysander's text response. The time delay made real-time conversation impossible. And you think we can win? I think we have to. Admiral Kwame Chin, commander of Earth's United Fleet, shook his head. Madam President, with all due respect to Ambassador Cade's diplomatic achievements, the military reality is grim. The Krell have 3,000 warships. Their technology is proven over millennia. Their tactics are studied in every military academy in the galaxy. We have 57 ships, half of which are converted colony vessels with weapons bolted on. What about the experimental ships? Asked Dr. Helena Vasquez, head of the Advanced Warfare Research Division. Still experimental, Admiral Chin replied. The Phantom-class stealth destroyers have only completed 2 test runs. The Cascade missile system has never been used in actual combat. And the quantum displacement drives. Work? Dr. Vasquez interrupted. The displacement drives work, Admiral. I stake my reputation on it. Your reputation won't stop Krell plasma cannons. No, said President Okonkwo, but maybe Dr. Vasquez's drives will. Helena, explain it to me like I'm not a physicist. Dr. Vasquez stood, projecting a hologram of a ship in the center of the table. The quantum displacement drive doesn't make a ship faster. It makes it uncertain. For brief moments, the ship exists in multiple positions simultaneously. To an enemy targeting system, it appears to flicker in and out of reality. How brief? The President asked. 3 to 7 seconds depending on the drive's power output. That doesn't sound very useful. It is if you time it right, Admiral Chin admitted grudgingly. If a ship can displace just as enemy weapons fire, those weapons hit empty space. And if the ship reappears in a different position, the enemy has to reacquire the target and fire again, President Okonkwo finished. Buying us time. In theory, Admiral Chin emphasized. Everything's theory until you do it for real, the President said. She turned to the screen where Lysander waited. Ambassador, the Council gave us 30 days. How will the Krell use that time? Another delay, then text appeared. They'll mass their forces. Krell doctrine emphasizes overwhelming strength. They'll bring every ship they can spare, expecting to crush us in a single decisive battle. Then we don't give them that battle? President Okonkwo said. Admiral, what's our mobilization status? All 57 ships are combat ready. The 15 Phantom-class destroyers are being fitted with the latest displacement drives. We've also retrofitted 20 colony transports with Cascade missile systems. They're not proper warships, but they can shoot. What about the colonies themselves? We've been evacuating non-essential personnel from the Kepler reaches for 3 weeks. Military-age volunteers are being formed into local defense militias. And we've been building something else. Admiral Chin brought up new schematics. Automated defense platforms. Thousands of them. Small, cheap, disposable. They're basically missiles with rudimentary AI and no human crew. Drone swarms, the president said. The Krell have experience fighting those. Not like these. These are smarter. They learn from each other in real time, adapting tactics mid-battle. It's untested technology, but everything we have is untested, President Okonkwo said. That's the advantage of being new. We don't know what's impossible yet. She stood. Here's what we're going to do. Admiral Chin, you'll take the main fleet and position it in the Kepler reaches as expected. Make it obvious. Make the Krell think we're doing exactly what they do, gathering our strength for a conventional battle. And what will we actually be doing? The president smiled. Something unconventional. Helena, how many displacement drives can you build in 30 days? For ships? Maybe 50 more. I don't need them for ships. I need them for platforms. Small ones. Ones that can carry a single warhead and displace right next to an enemy vessel. Dr. Vasquez's eyes widened. Teleporting mines. Madam President, that's insane? Desperate? Exactly what a species that's outgunned 50-1 should be doing. I was going to say brilliant, Dr. Vasquez grinned. I can have prototypes ready in a week. Make them. Admiral, coordinate with Helena. I want those platforms scattered throughout the Kepler reaches, hidden, waiting. When the Krell arrive expecting a fleet battle, we're going to give them a minefield that appears out of nowhere. It might work once, Admiral Chin cautioned. After that they'll adapt. Then we make sure once is enough. President Okonkwo turned back to the screen. Ambassador, tell the Krell we accept their challenge on their terms. Traditional fleet engagement in the Kepler reaches. Make them confident. And overconfident enemies make mistakes, Lysander's text appeared. Exactly. We have 30 days to prepare. Make them count. As the meeting dispersed, General Marcus Reeves, head of Earth's Strategic Defense Initiative, lingered. Madam President, if we lose this fight, the Krell won't stop at the Kepler reaches. I know. They'll come for Earth. They'll make an example of us. President Okonkwo looked at the star map on the wall, at the blue dot representing humanity's homeworld. Then we better not lose, Marcus. Because I'm not planning to be the president who let Earth become a cautionary tale. She paused. And because I have a feeling that even if we survive this, everything changes afterward. The galaxy's been stable for 10,000 years. We just broke it. Now we have to prove we deserve to exist in what comes next. No pressure, General Reeves muttered. All the pressure, President Okonkwo corrected. That's what it means to be human. We've always done our best work when everything's on the line. She walked to the window overlooking Geneva, the city lights spreading like captured stars. Contact our allies. Every species that made a heritage claim after we did, they have a stake in us winning. Even if they don't send ships, they can provide intelligence, resources, support. This isn't just our war anymore. And if they refuse? Then we fight alone. We've done it before. She smiled grimly. Besides, I'm betting that a lot of species are very interested in seeing whether the upstart humans can actually beat the Krell. We're not the only ones tired of the old order. Above Earth, in orbital shipyards, workers labored around the clock. Displacement drives were installed in ships that had never been designed for them. Weapons systems were tested and retested. Soldiers trained for battles they couldn't imagine. And in the Kepler reaches, 3 billion colonists looked up at the stars and wondered if they'd live to see next month. The 30-day clock was ticking. The Krell Armada. On the 28th day, the Krell fleet assembled at the edge of the Kepler reaches. 3,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering refined over millennia. The smallest destroyer was larger than Earth's flagship. The largest dreadnoughts dwarfed entire human cities. Fleet Commander Rex Val stood on the bridge of the inevitable conquest, the Krell's premier battle carrier, and watched his empire's might gather like a storm. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Composition? 1,200 destroyers, 900 cruisers, 600 dreadnoughts, 200 carriers, and 100 support vessels. Approximately 4 million Krell warriors total. Rexval's tail swished with satisfaction. And human forces? Long-range scans detect 57 vessels in the Kepler reaches, concentrated around the primary colony world of New Prometheus. They appear to be in standard defensive formation. 57 ships against 3,000. Rexval laughed, a sound like rocks grinding. They're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Perhaps both, Commander, his second-in-command war leader Kesharay suggested. We've analyzed their ship designs. They're unusual. Multiple vessels incorporate technology we don't recognize. All the more reason to crush them now before that technology matures. Rexval pulled up tactical displays. The humans think they can use cleverness to defeat strength. They won their legal victory through word games and loopholes. But there are no loopholes in war. Only victory or death. Shall we commence the attack? No. Not yet. Rexval studied the enemy formation. The rules of challenge require we offer one final chance to surrender. Hail the human flagship. Moments later, Admiral Chen's face appeared on the view screen. The human looked tired but defiant. Commander Rexval, Admiral Chen said. I'd say it's good to see you, but we both know I'd be lying. Admiral Chen. Your reputation precedes you. 4 years of exemplary service, 2 minor victories against pirates, and absolutely no experience in large-scale combat. Everyone's inexperienced until their first time. Wise words. Perhaps wise enough to recognize when you're beaten. Rexval gestured at the surrounding space, where Krell ships stretched in every direction. We outnumber you 60 to 1. We outgun you. Outarmor you. We have fought wars for 3,000 years. You have fought for barely 2 centuries. Surrender now, withdraw from the Kepler reaches, and we will allow Earth to survive. You have my word as a Krell commander. Your word that you'll let us crawl back home and live as second-class citizens in a galaxy you control? Better second-class citizens than extinct species. Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Commander, do you know what humanity's favorite stories are about? I don't care about your stories, Admiral. You should. Because they're all about the underdog. The weaker fighter. The outmatched army. The person who faces impossible odds and wins anyway through courage, cunning, and sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Admiral Chen leaned forward. Every child on Earth grows up hearing stories about David and Goliath, about Thermopylae, about the Alamo. We're raised on the idea that numbers don't matter when you're fighting for something that matters. Inspiring, Rexval said dryly. But inspiration doesn't stop plasma cannons. No, but it helps you think clearly when plasma cannons are shooting at you. Admiral Chen's smile faded. You want our answer, Commander? Here it is. No. We don't surrender. We don't withdraw. And when this is over, you're going to understand why humans tell stories about the underdog. Because we're about to make you live one. Then you've chosen death. So be it. The transmission ended. War leader Kesharay looked at Rexval. The human admiral is either a madman or knows something we don't. He knows he's about to die, Rexval said. All ships, battle formation Beta 7. We advance in 3 waves. First wave destroyers will engage and destroy the human fleet. Second wave cruisers will bombard colony installations. Third wave dreadnoughts will secure orbital control. This will be over in 2 hours. And if the humans have surprises? Then we'll adapt. We always do. That's why the Krell have ruled this region for 3 millennia. Rexval settled into his command chair. All ships advance. The Krell armada moved forward like a tidal wave of metal and firepower. Their formation was perfect, textbook military precision. Every ship knew its role. Every commander had trained for this exact scenario. They were 15 minutes from weapons range when the first mine exploded. It appeared out of nowhere, displaced directly into the path of a Krell destroyer. The warhead was small, barely worth noticing in conventional terms. But it was also extremely concentrated antimatter, and it detonated at point-blank range. The destroyer's shields held for 0.3 seconds. Then the ship simply ceased to exist, torn apart by an explosion that briefly rivaled a small star. What was that? Rexval demanded. Unknown, Commander. Some kind of mine, but it wasn't there a second ago. Find it. Find where it came from. Before his tactical officer could respond, 20 more mines displaced into existence, each one appearing directly beside a Krell ship. 20 simultaneous explosions lit up the void. 19 Krell destroyers died. One managed to get its shields up fast enough to survive, but its entire port side was slagged. Evasive maneuvers. Rexval roared. All ships random vectors. But the Krell fleet was too large, too concentrated. They packed themselves tight for maximum firepower, and now that density was killing them. Hundreds of displacement mines activated, teleporting into existence in the midst of the armada. Some appeared too far away to be effective. Others materialized inside shield perimeters and gutted Krell ships from within. The precise, orderly formation dissolved into chaos as captains tried to avoid invisible threats that could appear anywhere. In 5 minutes, the Krell had lost 300 ships. Where are these coming from? Rexval demanded. We don't know. They're not being launched from the human fleet. Those ships haven't moved. The mines must be prepositioned somehow, but our scans showed nothing. Because they weren't there until they activated, War Leader Keshare realized. The same displacement technology their ships use. The mines exist somewhere else until the moment they teleport in. Clever, Rexval admitted. But finite. They can't have an infinite supply. All ships maintain advance. Accept losses and push through. Once we reach the human fleet, this trap becomes irrelevant. The Krell pressed forward, taking casualties with grim determination. Every few seconds, more mines appeared, more ships died. But the armada was too large to stop. Even losing ships by the dozen, they still outnumbered the humans 40-1. They closed to weapons range. Fire at will. Rexval commanded. 3,000 Krell ships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic slugs filled the space between the fleets. Enough firepower to glass a planet concentrated on 57 human vessels. And every single shot missed. The human ships flickered out of existence a fraction of a second before the weapon struck, reappearing in slightly different positions. The Krell's devastating opening volley hit empty space. Displacement drives on every ship, Keshare said, awe creeping into her voice. They're making themselves impossible to target. Nothing is impossible to target, Rexval growled. Continuous fire. Saturate the area. They can't displace forever. The Krell ships fired again and again, filling the void with deadly energy. Some shots connected, overwhelming human shields through sheer volume. 2 human ships exploded. Then 3 more. But the humans were fighting back now, and their weapons were devastating. Cascade missiles, small, smart, and relentless, swarmed from every human ship. Unlike conventional missiles, these split apart during flight, becoming dozens of smaller warheads that approached from multiple angles simultaneously. Krell point defense systems struggled to track them all. Missiles slipped through, impacting shields, weakening them. More missiles followed, exploiting the gaps. A Krell cruiser's shields collapsed. Missiles poured through, tearing the ship apart from within. Their weapons are designed for our shields, Keshare observed. Multi-stage attacks that overwhelm defenses through persistence rather than power. Then we counter with numbers, Rexval said. All ships focus fire protocols. 10 ships target 1 human vessel at a time. Overwhelming force. The Krell adapted, concentrating their firepower. Human ships began dying faster. The displacement drives bought them time, but not invincibility. One by one, Earth's vessels fell. But they were making the Krell pay for every kill. By the time half the human fleet was destroyed, the Krell had lost 1,000 ships. The ratio was still heavily in the Krell's favor, but the cost was far higher than Rexval had anticipated. Status, he demanded. We've destroyed 30 human vessels. Approximately 27 remain active. However, we've lost 1,100 ships, and displacement mine attacks continue sporadically. Estimated human casualties? Difficult to assess. Their ships are smaller with smaller crews. Perhaps 50,000 humans dead. Against 400,000 Krell. The ratio should have been reversed. Something's wrong, Keshare said quietly. What do you mean? They're losing. They're dying. But look at their pattern. She highlighted the human ship's movements. They're not retreating. They're not panicking. They're executing a planned withdrawal toward the planet. They're falling back to make a final stand, Rexval said. Predictable. Or they're leading us somewhere. Rexval studied the tactical display. The surviving human ships were indeed falling back toward New Prometheus in good order, still fighting, still inflicting casualties. And the Krell fleet, bloodied but victorious, was pursuing. It's a trap, Rexval realized. Then the second wave of displacement mines activated. Not dozens this time. Thousands. They appeared throughout the Krell formation, so many that the explosion overlapped into a chain reaction of devastating energy. 600 Krell ships died in 60 seconds. Pull back. Rexval roared. But it was too late. They'd pushed deep into the Kepler reaches, and now they were surrounded by invisible minefields that activated in waves, timed to cause maximum damage to a pursuing fleet. The humans had never planned to win a ship-to-ship battle. They'd planned to lead the Krell into a killing field and bleed them until numbers stopped mattering. And it was working. The turning point. The battle raged for 18 hours. In that time, the Krell fleet was reduced from 3,000 ships to 800. Earth's fleet shrank from 57 to just 9 vessels, all heavily damaged. The void between the stars had become a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. On New Prometheus, 3 billion colonists huddled in underground shelters, listening to the sounds of orbital bombardment shake the Earth above them. On Earth, President Okonkwo watched casualty reports stream in, each number representing someone's child, parent, lover, friend. The weight of her decision pressed down like a physical thing. And in the council chamber, 73 species watched humanity's desperate stand with varying degrees of horror, fascination, and calculation. "They're going to lose," Ambassador Thelmore of the Syraxian Confederacy said. Even with their clever tactics, even with casualties far exceeding projections, the Krell still outnumber them. "But they've proven it's possible to hurt the Krell," said another delegate. "For 3,000 years, no one has bloodied the Dominion like this." "That will only make the Krell angrier," High Arbiter Velshera observed. "If humanity loses, the Krell will make their punishment severe. And they will use this as justification to tighten control over all of us." In the viewing gallery, Maya Ishikawa sat beside Ambassador Lysander Cade, watching the same tactical feats. Lysander had returned to the council to serve as humanity's official observer, as required by the rules of challenge. "How long can they hold?" Maya asked quietly. "Not long enough," Lysander replied. "The displacement mines are exhausted. Our ships are running on fumes. Admiral Chin is executing the retreat perfectly, but there's nowhere left to retreat to. So we lost." "We lost this battle," Lysander corrected. "But we might have won something more important." "What?" "Look around this chamber. Look at how everyone's watching. Before this fight, the Krell were seen as invincible, untouchable. Now everyone knows they can bleed." On the inevitable conquest, Commander Rex Val was learning what it meant to win a Pyrrhic victory. His beautiful armada was shattered. Of his 3,000 ships, only 800 remained combat-capable. Thousands of his warriors were dead. And the humans were still fighting. "Commander, the remaining human vessels have taken position in low orbit over New Prometheus," Keshare reported. "They're using the planet as cover, forcing us to risk hitting the colonies if we want to engage them." "Clever to the last," Rex Val said bitterly. "But ultimately futile. Prepare boarding teams. We'll take their ships by force if necessary. I want this ended." "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Priority diplomatic channel." "From Earth?" Rex Val was surprised. "Not from Admiral Chin?" "No, sir. From President Okonkwo herself." Rex Val's eyes narrowed. "Put her through." President Sarah Okonkwo appeared on the view screen. She looked exhausted, her eyes carrying the weight of millions of deaths. But her voice was steady. "Commander Rex Val, I'm contacting you to discuss terms." "Surrender terms?" Rex Val allowed himself a small smile, finally showing sense. "No. Terms for ending this war before you lose your entire fleet." The bridge went silent. Several Krell officers hissed in disbelief. "You have 9 ships left," Rex Val said slowly. "I have 800. And you dare threaten me?" "I'm not threatening you, Commander. I'm offering you a way out." President Okonkwo leaned forward. "Your fleet is decimated. You've lost 70% of your forces. Even if you destroy our remaining ships and bombard New Prometheus until nothing lives, you'll return to Krell space with barely a quarter of the armada you left with. Your enemies within the Dominion will see weakness. Your rivals will move against you. You've won the battle, Commander, but you're about to lose the political war that follows." Rex Val's tail went rigid. She was right and he knew it. The Krell Dominion maintained power through the appearance of invincibility. Returning with such catastrophic losses would raise questions. Prompt challenges. Other Krell commanders would sense opportunity. "What are you proposing?" he asked carefully. "A negotiated settlement. You withdraw from the Kepler reaches. We maintain our colonies. In exchange, Earth formally recognizes Krell military supremacy in the galaxy and agrees to a non-aggression pact for the next 100 years. That's not victory. It's not defeat either. You can return home and tell your people that you fought the upstart humans to a standstill, that you forced them to acknowledge Krell strength, and that you secured peace without losing what remains of your fleet. President Okonkwo paused. Or you can spend another day killing the last of our ships, lose another 100 vessels to our final defenses, and return home to explain why you sacrificed so much for so little. War leader Keshare stepped closer to Rexval. Commander, she's offering you a political victory in exchange for a military stalemate. It's not a terrible deal. Rexval wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed to finish what he'd started, to crush these arrogant humans and make an example that would echo through the galaxy. But President Okonkwo was right. The cost of victory had become too high. I will need to consult with the Dominion Council, he said finally. You have 6 hours, President Okonkwo replied. After that, my surviving ships will engage in a final suicide run against your fleet. They can't win, but I guarantee they'll take at least 100 of your vessels with them. Maybe more. Is that worth it, Commander? The transmission ended. Keshare looked at Rexval. What will you do? What I must, Rexval said heavily. Contact the Dominion Council. Tell them we've achieved our strategic objectives and recommend accepting the human terms. They'll call it weakness. They'll call it wisdom, Rexval corrected. Eventually. Maybe. He looked at the tactical display at the burning wreckage of 2,000 ships. The humans fought better than I expected. They deserve to survive. And we deserve to leave with our honor intact. 6 hours later, the Krell fleet withdrew from the Kepler reaches. The war was over. Humanity had survived. In the council chamber, the assembled species watched in stunned silence as both fleets disengaged. No one had expected this outcome. The Krell never negotiated. The Krell never withdrew. Until now. The humans won, someone whispered. They didn't win, another voice corrected. They survived. But in a galaxy where the Krell were supposed to be invincible, survival is victory. Lysander stood, feeling Maya's hand grip his arm. We did it, she breathed. We actually did it. No, Lysander said, looking around the chamber at the 73 species, all of them recalculating their positions in a suddenly unstable galaxy. We started it. Now comes the hard part. What hard part? Figuring out what happens next. The new order. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler reaches, the Galactic Sovereignty Council reconvened. But the chamber was different now. Species that had sat in the same seats for thousands of years had moved. New alliances had formed. Old power structures had cracked. And at the center of it all sat humanity, no longer on trial but at the negotiating table. The Council recognizes Ambassador Cade of Earth, High Arbiter Velshera announced. Lysander stood. Behind him sat representatives from 47 other species. Everyone who had made heritage claims after humanity's legal gambit. They'd formed a loose coalition called the Heritage Alliance, and they'd invited Earth to lead it. Thank you, High Arbiter, Lysander began. I'm here today to propose a comprehensive reform of the Colonization Compact, the Resource Allocation Treaty, and the governance structure of the sovereignty itself. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Rexval, still recovering from his political wounds, watched with undisguised hostility. The current system is broken, Lysander continued. Not because of our legal interpretations, but because it was designed to maintain the power of a few species at the expense of everyone else. For 10,000 years, the Jothic controlled trade, the Norvathians controlled finance, and the Krell controlled military force. Everyone else existed at their pleasure. This is the natural order, interjected Jothic trade prince Zarven, his mandibles clicking irritably. Species earn their position through merit. Or through being first, Lysander countered. Your people developed faster than light travel early. That gave you advantages that compounded over millennia. But merit isn't about who got there first. It's about what you do with opportunities when you get them. He activated a hologram showing the galaxy divided into color-coded regions. Here's what I propose. The galaxy is reorganized into sovereign zones, each governed by regional councils with proportional representation. No single species controls any zone. Trade routes become common heritage, managed cooperatively. Military forces are maintained by individual species but subject to collective defense agreements. You want to dismantle the sovereignty, Velshera said. I want to reform it, Lysander corrected. The sovereignty was supposed to prevent war and promote cooperation. But it's become a tool for maintaining hierarchies. We're proposing something better, a federation where every species has a voice, where power comes from cooperation rather than domination. And who leads this federation? Rexval demanded. You? Humanity thinks that because they survived one battle they should rule the galaxy. No one rules, Lysander said firmly. That's the point. We have a rotating council leadership, term limits, and decisions made by consensus when possible, majority vote when necessary. Every species gets representation proportional to their population and economic contribution. The strong should lead, Rex Val argued. That's how the galaxy has always worked. And look where it's gotten us, Lysander gestured at the half-empty chamber. Half the species in this sovereignty live in fear of the other half. Trade is controlled by monopolies. Innovation is stifled because new technologies threaten established powers. We fought a war that killed millions because the alternative was accepting a system that doesn't work. You're describing chaos, said Norvathian financial overseer Kelvitz, his gaseous form swirling anxiously in its containment suit. I'm describing democracy, Lysander replied. Messy, complicated, frustrating democracy. It's not efficient. It's not clean. But it's better than the alternative. And if we refuse? Rexval asked. Then the Heritage Alliance proceeds without you, Lysander said. 47 species representing 30% of the galaxy's population and economy. We'll form our own federation, our own trade networks, our own defense pacts. You're welcome to maintain the old sovereignty with whoever stays. But I think you'll find it's a much smaller, much weaker organization without us. The chamber erupted in debate. Species caucused with their neighbors. Delegates shouted across the floor. The order that had existed for 10,000 years was dying in real time. President Okonkwo watched from Earth, listening to Lysander's speech broadcast across human space. Around her, advisors and cabinet members waited for her reaction. He's starting a revolution, Dr. Vasquez observed. He's finishing one, President Okonkwo corrected. We started it when we refused to back down. Now we have to see it through. Are we ready to lead a galactic federation? Admiral Chin asked. We've been spacefaring for 2 centuries. Most of these species have civilizations older than human history. That's exactly why we might be the right ones to lead, President Okonkwo said. We don't have millennia of baggage. We don't have ancient grudges or entrenched interests. We're new enough to see possibilities that others have forgotten. Or naive enough to try things that can't work, General Reeves added. Maybe both, the president admitted. But I'd rather try and fail than accept a galaxy where humanity exists at someone else's sufferance. The vote in the council chamber took 3 days. Species withdrew, reconsidered, negotiated, and returned. The Jothic demanded trade concessions. The Norvathians wanted financial guarantees. Smaller species wanted assurances they wouldn't be crushed by larger neighbors. Lysander and his team worked around the clock, building consensus one species at a time. On the 3rd day the vote was called. All in favor of the proposed galactic reorganization and the formation of the federated sovereignty? 61 species voted in favor. 12 abstained. Only the Krell Dominion voted against. The measure passes, Velshera announced, her crystalline structure reflecting light in patterns that might have been resignation or relief. The galactic sovereignty is hereby dissolved. The federated sovereignty is established. Elections for the first Federation Council will be held in 6 months. As species began filing out, already forming campaign strategies and political alliances, Rex Val approached Lysander. You've destroyed 10,000 years of order, the Krell commander said. We've created the opportunity for something better, Lysander replied. And if it fails? If the galaxy descends into chaos? Then we'll have failed spectacularly trying something new instead of slowly dying under something old. Lysander extended his hand. The Krell are invited to participate in the Federation, Commander. You'd be a valuable voice. Rex Val looked at the offered hand for a long moment. In Krell culture, such gestures were signs of submission. But humanity's customs were different. Slowly he reached out and clasped Lysander's hand. We'll participate, Rex Val said. But we'll be watching. If this Federation proves weaker than the sovereignty, if it cannot maintain order, then you'll say, I told you so, Lysander finished. Fair enough. We'll do our best to prove you wrong. As Rex Val left, Maya approached Lysander. Did we just accidentally conquer the galaxy? We didn't conquer anything, Lysander said. We just convinced everyone to try governing themselves cooperatively instead of letting the biggest, oldest species make all the decisions. And Earth becomes the de facto leader of the Heritage Alliance, which is the largest voting bloc in the new Federation. Well, Lysander admitted, there might be some leading involved. But it's democratic leading. Totally different from conquering. Tell that to the historians, Maya said. They're going to call this the Earth Empire anyway, you know. The Council Chamber incident, how Earth became an empire. Then will be the strangest empire in history, Lysander said. One that gives everyone a vote and encourages them to disagree with us. Back on Earth, President Okonkwo addressed the United Assembly, broadcast to every human settlement across space. Today humanity took a seat at the galactic table not through conquest, but through courage. Not through domination but through determination to build something better. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to face challenges we can't yet imagine. But we're going to face them together, as equals in a galaxy that's finally learning what that word means. The assembly erupted in applause. Across human space people celebrated. They'd gone to war to defend their colonies. They'd emerged as founders of a new galactic order. In the Kepler reaches, on New Prometheus, the 3 billion colonists who'd survived orbital bombardment held remembrance ceremonies for the fallen. Monuments were erected. Names were carved in stone. The price of their survival was counted in millions of lives. But they'd survived. And the galaxy would never be the same. Empire of ideas. 5 years later, the federated sovereignty was unrecognizable from its predecessor. The council chamber had been redesigned with seats arranged in concentric circles rather than hierarchical tiers. Species rotated through leadership positions. Trade routes had been opened to competition. Innovation flourished as new species brought fresh perspectives to ancient problems. And Earth, despite having one of the smaller populations in the Federation, had become its beating heart. Lysander Cade, now serving as Earth's first Federation Chancellor, stood before the Council preparing to address his greatest challenge yet, the Krell succession crisis. Commander Rex Val had died 6 months earlier, not in battle but from a wasting disease that even Krell medicine couldn't cure. His death had triggered a power struggle within the Dominion, with 3 different factions claiming leadership. The situation was deteriorating rapidly toward civil war. The Council recognizes Chancellor Cade, announced the current rotating High Arbiter, a Syraxian named Velmor. Thank you, High Arbiter, Lysander began. For the past 6 months, we've watched the Krell Dominion tear itself apart. 3 factions, each claiming legitimacy, each refusing to negotiate. 17 skirmishes have been fought. Thousands are dead. And the violence is escalating. He paused, letting the gravity sink in. The old sovereignty would have ignored this. Internal Krell affairs, they'd say. Not our problem. But we're not the old sovereignty. The Krell are part of this federation, which means their crisis is our crisis. What do you propose? Asked Ambassador Thelmore, now representing the Syraxian Confederacy's substantial fleet. Mediation, Lysander said. Not military intervention. Not economic sanctions. Simple, direct mediation. I'm volunteering to travel to Krell space and meet with all 3 factions. I'll help them find a path forward that doesn't require bloodshed. That's suicide, said Trade Prince Zarven, who'd become an unlikely ally of Earth over the past 5 years. The Krell factions hate each other. And they still resent you for the war. Maybe, Lysander admitted. But someone has to try. And it should be someone who understands what it's like to face impossible odds and find a way through. The council debated for hours. Some species supported the mission. Others called it reckless. But eventually, a narrow majority voted to approve Lysander's diplomatic mission to Krell space. President Okonkwo, now in her 2nd term, contacted Lysander before he departed. You don't have to do this, she said. We could send someone else. It has to be me, Lysander replied. I fought Rex Val. I respected him. And he respected me eventually. The Krell understand strength but they also understand honor. I have to at least try. And if they kill you? Then Earth has a very dramatic martyr, and Maya gets promoted to Chancellor. Lysander smiled. But I don't plan on dying. I've gotten pretty good at surviving impossible situations. The journey to Krell Prime took 2 weeks. Lysander traveled on a single diplomatic shuttle, unarmed, broadcasting his intentions on every frequency. It was a calculated risk. Showing vulnerability to species that respected strength seemed counterintuitive, but Lysander was betting that the Krell would honor safe passage for an official mediator. He was right. All 3 factions granted him permission to land, though none guaranteed his safety. Krell Prime was a harsh world, all red rock and volcanic plains. The Krell had built their civilization in defiance of their planet's hostility, which explained much about their character. Lysander met with each faction separately first. War leader Keshare, Rex Val's former second-in-command, led the traditionalist faction that wanted to maintain the old military hierarchies. Supreme General Thexkor represented the expansionists who believed the Krell should resume aggressive territorial conquest. And diplomat caste leader Nexera championed reform, arguing that the Krell needed to adapt to the new Federation reality. Each meeting was tense. The Krell were not comfortable with the idea of a human mediating their internal dispute. "Why should we listen to you?" Thexkor demanded during their second session. "You're the one who weakened us, who cost us the war, who destroyed our reputation for invincibility." "I'm the one who survived what should have killed me," Lysander replied. "Just like you're trying to help the Krell survive what should destroy them. We have that in common." "We have nothing in common," Thexkor snarled. "We both want our people to thrive in a galaxy that's changing faster than we can control," Lysander said. "We both know that the old ways don't work anymore. And we both understand that strength without adaptation is just another word for extinction." The words seemed to hit home. Thexkor's tail stopped lashing. Over the next month, Lysander shuttled between the three factions, carrying proposals, suggesting compromises, building trust incrementally. It was exhausting work, made harder by the fact that Krell politics involved as much ritual combat as debate. But slowly, painfully, progress emerged. The breakthrough came when Lysander proposed something radical: a tripartite leadership council. Instead of one supreme leader, the Krell would be governed by representatives from all three factions, each with specific areas of authority. Traditionalists would manage military affairs, expansionists would oversee exploration and colonization, and reformists would handle diplomatic relations. "Shared power is weakness," Keshare objected. "Shared power is insurance," Lysander corrected. "No single faction can dominate. No single leader can make catastrophic mistakes. You check and balance each other, just like the Federation Council checks and balances its members." "It's not the Krell way," Nexera said, though she sounded intrigued. "The Krell way nearly led to civil war," Lysander pointed out. "Maybe it's time for a new way. One that preserves Krell strength while acknowledging Krell diversity." The three leaders looked at each other. Decades of rivalry and resentment hung in the air. But so did the specter of what would happen if they couldn't find agreement. "We'll try it," Keshare said finally. "For one cycle. If it doesn't work..." "If it doesn't work, you can always resume trying to kill each other," Lysander said. "But I think you'll find that governing together makes you all stronger than fighting alone ever could." The Krell Tripartite Council was established 2 weeks later. It was imperfect, contentious, and required constant negotiation between the three leaders. But it worked. More importantly, it prevented a civil war that would have killed millions and potentially destabilized the entire Federation. When Lysander returned to the council chamber, he received a standing ovation from the assembled species. Even the delegates who'd opposed his mission acknowledged what he'd accomplished. "You've done the impossible again," Maya said as they walked back to Earth's delegation quarters. "Survived hostile territory, prevented a war, and revolutionized Krell governance. At this rate, you're going to run out of challenges." "I doubt that," Lysander said. "The Federation's only 5 years old. We're still figuring out how to make this work. There'll be more crises, more conflicts, more impossible situations. And you'll handle them all with clever speeches and diplomatic magic?" "I'll handle them the only way I know how," Lysander said. "By remembering that we're all just trying to survive in a complicated galaxy, and survival is easier when we help each other instead of fighting." That evening, Lysander gave an address to the Federation Council that would become one of the defining speeches of the new galactic order. 5 years ago, humanity stood accused in this chamber of violating laws we'd barely learned existed. We faced annihilation by the galaxy's most powerful military. We should have lost. By every rational calculation, we should have been crushed. He paused, looking around at the assembled species. But we weren't. Not because we were stronger or smarter or better than the Krell. But because we refused to accept that the way things had always been was the way they had to be. We looked at treaties written thousands of years ago and asked, do these still serve us? We looked at power structures that seemed eternal and asked, do these still work? And when the answer was no, we had the courage to imagine something different. That's what the Federation represents. Not human dominance. Not Earth's empire. But the collective courage of 73 species to try governing themselves in a new way. To build a galaxy where power comes from cooperation, where strength is measured by what we create together rather than what we can take from each other. We'll make mistakes. We'll have disagreements. There will be crises we can't predict and challenges we're not ready for. But we'll face them together as equals, as partners, as a federation. 5 years ago I stood in this chamber and argued for Earth's right to exist. Today I stand here and argue for something bigger, the right of all species to shape our collective future. Not through conquest or domination, but through the hard, messy, frustrating work of democratic cooperation. The galaxy belongs to all of us. Let's build something worthy of that privilege. The applause was thunderous. On Earth, President Okonkwo watched the speech with her cabinet. He makes it sound so simple, Admiral Chin observed. That's his gift, President Okonkwo said. Making the impossible sound inevitable. Making revolution sound like common sense. Do you think it'll last? Dr. Vasquez asked. The Federation, I mean. Can it survive? I think, President Okonkwo said slowly, that it'll survive as long as we have people willing to fight for it. Not with weapons but with words. Not through force, but through the stubborn insistence that we can be better than we've been. She looked at the star map on the wall, at the vast expanse of the galaxy now bound together by treaties instead of tyranny. We didn't set out to build an empire. We just wanted to survive, to keep our colonies, to exist on our own terms. But in fighting for that right, we showed everyone else that the old order could be challenged. That the impossible was possible. So we did build an empire, General Reeves said. Just not the kind that history usually remembers. An empire of ideas, President Okonkwo agreed. The most powerful kind. Because you can't destroy an idea with weapons. You can't conquer it with force. Once people believe that change is possible, that belief spreads like fire. And Earth lit the match, Maya said, joining them via view screen from the council chamber. Earth struck the first spark, President Okonkwo corrected. But the fire belongs to everyone now. That's what makes it beautiful. And terrifying. And absolutely unstoppable. 10 years later, historians would indeed call it the Earth Empire, though not in the way conquerors were usually remembered. They'd call it that because Earth had exported its most dangerous idea to the galaxy. That power should serve the people, not the other way around. It was an empire built on arguments instead of armies, on votes instead of violence, on the revolutionary notion that the small could challenge the large, the weak could resist the strong, and the new could overturn the old. And it all started with one human ambassador standing in the council chamber, refusing to be afraid, and daring to ask a simple question. Why should things stay the way they've always been? The galaxy would never be the same. And humanity, the species that had almost been crushed for daring to exist on its own terms, became the unlikely heart of a new age. Not through conquest. Through courage.